together. They had an awesome discussion yesterday here at the booth. There's Shelby. He got an injury, so he's sitting there. But anyway, but Shelby and his team do a phenomenal job. Affordability, get real, get better. Soon after the last Sierra and Space Symposium, pulled together the executive core, and we're on a meeting every week to talk about behaviors, talk about what our North Stars are, and getting after those things that quite honestly need us to move forward to be relevant for not only today, but into the future. That has worked very well. A very get real type forum in many respects, getting after the discussion points that sometimes we just let go, but to try to get after the brass tacks of what it really means to say get real. And then on the get better, what are those things that we can be doing differently? And we center our attention around capability, availability, and affordability. Capability in terms of what are those true capabilities directly needed by the warfighters, with a direct link to what it needs to win, deliver the integrated warfighting capability the fleet needs to win at a cost we can afford, and more importantly, make sure not only that the assets are available, but make sure that those assets from a reliability standpoint, as an example, stay on that wing longer and overall improve the readiness of the forces. So capability, fairly well-rounded, make sure we're aligned in not only what we're buying, but what's in inventory and what's needed to win. Availability. Availability, again, leveraging off of what are those assets that we need and making sure they're up. What is the pipeline for parts? What is the pipeline for repair? And getting after it. I think many of you recall the 341 Rhino recovery from 250 aircraft to 341, and now we're operating upwards of 360, where most folks said it can't be done. And we went after the system. 7 pillars that we focused on, integrated, and really brought meaningful change that's lasted now for several years. And we have spiraled that across the remaining parts of naval aviation. While we still have work to do in some of the platforms, our intent is to have all of us be at full mission capable and mission capable rates. It's a huge success story about really challenging how we do our business and getting after the 5 whys of the reasons why we're at 250, and then understanding our business much better. The availability, again, with the reliability, working with our industry partners to really challenge why is the reliability the way it is and see what we can do to improve it. And then the affordability. Well, just throw more money at it. We call those inputs. We're not looking about the inputs. What we're really looking at is the how of the business and how do we transform the business and actually operate at a higher rate of readiness while at reduced costs. And we started with our sustainment area, again with the Rhino, but again has spiraled. And we saw ourselves a target for last year for $200 million to pull out of the system. And then once we pull that out of the system, that money gets put back into the naval aviation system. That's new behaviors. This year, it's $1 billion target. To go still achieve the outcomes that we need for our readiness for the fleet, but pull out that money and then reinvest it back in the naval aviation for the purposes of achieving a better Navy for our warfighters. And so those capability, affordability, and availability are the key tenets that we were getting after. Then we've had huge successes over the last year. And the fourth is we'll be exploring is safety. Is how do we enhance and ensure that our safety posture remains high, and we get after those things to ensure that we don't compromise safety in any way. So that's coming in this next year as we look for the future. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Admiral Hornbuckle, and they'll pick it up from there.
Audio check. Admiral Chevy, Mr. Radowski, thanks for the opportunity. So I'll be the first of the 3 echelon 3s that you'll hear under NAVAIR. So I'll talk to you briefly about who we are in the FRC enterprise, briefly about what we are doing differently, and then a short ask for our industry partners as we go forward. So for those of you that may not be as familiar, the FRC enterprise is anchored by our 3 heavy depots located in Jacksonville, Florida, Cherry Point, North Carolina, and San Diego, California. just within that enterprise represents about 12,000 civilian artisans working at the depot level on a mission to provide world-class maintenance, repair, and overhaul to the fleet. We're also supported by about another 6,500 active duty sailors in just about every place that naval aviation has a footprint around the world. We have a huge presence in the Tidewater of Virginia. We have large presences in Lemoore, in Whidbey Island, overseas in FRC Westpac, our reserve command anchored in Fort Worth and New Orleans. And again, debts and detachments just about anywhere naval aviation and naval aviation maintenance exists. So that's who we are. Each year we produce, overhaul about 500 aircraft a year, about 3,000 engines and modules, and over 50,000 components for naval aviation. We do it in a very collaborative manner with our industry partners, as we spoke of earlier. What we're doing differently started with the journey that Mr. Radowski described. In 2018, when our national defense strategy pivoted so dramatically, the call for 80% readiness for our tactical aircraft. That came to us in the form of Hornet readiness, the journey from 250 to 341 and beyond. We have scaled that learning, those industry best practices across our product lines. We've done similar improvements in V-22, H-60, the E-2 program, and we're working systematically across all of the type model series in naval aviation. In about 2021, we built on the good work that we did for availability, and we pivoted toward affordability. We launched the cost pillar within NSSA, and we went on a journey to see if we can make sure that every dollar that naval aviation spends reaps the maximum benefit for the warfighter and the taxpayer. We've taken a good look, and we're now operating like an FRC enterprise rather than a collection of individual FRC commands. One of the biggest things that you'll notice is different is we ask all our government and our industry partners to use our CCO. Our centralized business office is the one singular entry point into the FRC enterprise. What that will do for all of us is it makes sure that all the capabilities that we bring to bear are immediately available. We're able to spread work, avoid undue redundancy, avoid gaps, and allow our portfolio to run as efficiently and effectively as possible. So those best practices have yielded roughly about a 10% return in the last 18 months to naval aviation on the roughly $3 billion working capital fund that we produce. And we're going to keep going toward that billion and eventually $2 billion goal that Mr. Radowski talked about. So the ask for this forum for our industry partners, and first a word of thanks, because much of what we have been able to do has been based on the best practices that we've leveraged from our partnerships. So two things that we're really doing differently. One is the partnership and execution. You will see a level of transparency and barrier removal throughout the entire ecosystem that we really haven't experienced before. We will sit on meetings where you'll have every government stakeholder, the prime and sub-vendors that are applicable, and we will have very transparent discussions about where the barriers in our organization. We'll work collaboratively to get to root cause, and we'll roll those up and immediately either fix them at our level or elevate them to the H2 and possibly the H1 level to get those barriers removed. So my thanks to the industry that's helping us along that way. And for those of you that aren't engaged in those forums yet, look forward to joining you there. And lastly, the other ask is to relook at the way that you approach your public-private partnerships with the FRC enterprise. Navigating the pandemic was extremely challenging for all of us. The FRC workforce has been extremely resilient. When we've been able to come in, partner, and work through in unconventional ways that we just wouldn't have done 3 or 4 years ago. We've got partnerships where we actually send artisans, engineers, logisticians on the floor of our industry partners. We've got artisans on the floor on production lines in CSAs, and we're bringing our industry partners into our facilities where appropriate to collaborate, really in ways that we haven't done before, and it's yielding amazing results. So I look forward to your questions. Again, Admiral Chevy, thanks for the opportunity today.
Good morning, this is CJ Utera representing NOC AD, and one of the things I want to highlight as Admiral Chevy and Mr. Radowski have been talking about get real, get better, and what does that really mean for us? In my 37 years, I haven't seen anything like it. We've talked about many initiatives throughout the years on how to improve our organization and make us more effective, but this results in a completely new way of communicating, The level of transparency, as you mentioned, I think is incredibly important. The authentic conversations where we can get to the root cause and be able to get through all the junk and just get to what we really need to talk about to figure out what the solution is to the problem is something that I haven't seen in my entire career. So it's not just a program, it's not just training, it is a change in the culture and the way that we do business. And I would say that is promulgating throughout the entire civilian workforce, military workforce, but it also needs to include all of our industry partners. If you see something, you need to let us know. If you have a lessons learned, you need to be able to bring it to the table. When we think about capability, availability, and affordability, many of you might have some experience with project management and the triple constraint of cost, schedule, and performance. This is radically different from that. In that domain, if I want more performance, I can trade away some of the areas of schedule and cost. That's not the case here. We need the capability, we need the availability, and we need to do it in an affordable way. So as was previously mentioned, just adding more money to the equation is not going to solve this problem. So we're radically taking a look at everything that we do to try to figure out how we bring additional capability to the warfighter quicker. In my organization at NAVAIR Wolf, we're focused on rapid engineering, and part of that rapid engineering is when we go fast, it doesn't mean that we sacrifice quality. When we deliver capability, it needs to be supportable and needs to be available to the warfighter when they need it. And that means that I think 80% of our total life cycle cost is in sustainment. So we have to design our systems to be sustainable. We have to meet our operational availability and reliability requirements because the fleet depends on that capability. So as we continue to be able to move forward with that, I would say when you take a look at capability, availability, and affordability, ask how you can answer all three of that equation. A couple other things that I just like to point out is when we work with industry, we understand that we have intellectual property. We understand that there's proprietary solutions, but we have to bundle that in an open systems architecture. So at NAVAIR Wolf, the reason we can deliver 70% of our products in 2 years or less and 10% of our products in 3 months or less is because we build an open systems architecture with open system standards, incorporating the best of breed from industry. And then when we field that capability, it's much easier to integrate new technology and also to rapidly take an existing architecture and apply it to a new customer. So we're asking everybody to come on board as part of that. If you have good ideas related to how we can incorporate technology into an open systems architecture, we're very interested in understanding and learning more about that. Last but not least, I'll just use a great example for NAVAIR, the Joint Simulation Environment, and along with that, the digital range. It's a government-owned architecture that's rapidly expandable, and it's expanding right now. Last year, we were able to train 80 pilots in over 400 missions that would not be possible without that capability. And so as we continue to rapidly deploy that, the idea of being able to expand rapidly and support the warfighter, it's not just the Navy, it's the Air Force and the Marines participating as well. It's a really big deal. So on that note, I know Admiral Hash is going to talk a little bit about the NOC business plan, and I could just say I'm really excited about the opportunity for NOC-AD and NOC-WD to collaborate in ways that we haven't before.
There we go. Thanks, Christian. Appreciate it. Yeah, so good morning, everybody. I'm glad to be here today. Keith Ash, I'm the Warfare Center Commander out at WD, China Lake, Point Magoo, but we're all over the country. But what we're really doing now is that NOC business plan. We talked about how we're doing things differently between the two warfare centers, Aircraft Division and Weapons Division. We're working to be collaborative. And so we have a central business plan built together with two main tenets across that overspan all the things we're doing. How do we optimize from end to end what we're delivering for the research, development, test, and evaluation? And how do we do digital transformation to bring that to bear? And there's lots of other supporting entities to that between our people, our infrastructure, and our investments to make that happen. But all that aligns to bring together integrated warfighting capability to align our programs, close the seams, and deliver capability to the fleet. And so we are doing that as a one NOC concept, two commands, working together, align the very best we can. We're looking for opportunities to make sure that we are looking across the whole spectrum of NOC-AD and WA resources to support our programs. We're looking for ways that we can save money through our capability or the cost pillar in things that maybe we've duplicated across the two commands. And we're looking for opportunities to better serve across the NAVAIR and broader our customers even outside of NAVAIR to deliver the capability they need to do. Inside of that, NOC-WD has been working on and just delivered in January our strategic plan for how we're going to envision NOC-WD supporting that NOC business plan and the National Defense Strategy. Inside of that NOC-WD business plan, or a strategic plan, we have kind of 4 areas, and unfortunately I don't memorize it, but the focus of those 4 areas are weapon system development, transformation. You heard people talk about we got to do things differently. We can't do the same thing over and over again. We've been amazing at how we deliver game-changing capability in 15 to 20 years. We don't have 15 to 20 years, and we don't have an open pocketbook to move that. So how do we do that differently? We talked about a couple different ways and how to get after that, and how do we digitize and go into the future. The next one is integrated spectrum warfare. The electromagnetic spectrum is very complicated today, is going to get even more complicated in the future. And how do we help our warfighters use that spectrum and deny to those who would want to bring harm to us? The third is air wing of the future integration, interoperability. As we bring new platforms, you've heard the CNO talk about how we're going to 40% unmanned in the future for the air wing. What does that look like? How do we integrate unmanned for man-unmanned teaming together so that we operate as one? And so there's a lot of work going on how we bring the integration, interoperability, air wing integration, integration with other naval assets, integration with joint and allied partners, because we are going to be doing this all together. If we cannot go alone in any conflict in the future, we have to do it with our allies and partners. And then finally, advanced live virtual constructive capabilities. And that's a line focus area. It sounds like a supporting enabler, and it really kind of is supporter, but we're not going to deliver future capabilities in the old ways of doing things. We can't live fly, live fire everything we do. There's things we have to do at scale, and at scale would cost too much, it would take too long. And so we have to build models. So we have to build models, we have to validate those models. And we have to build environments. Christian talked about open mission systems. We need open standards for our models, and you're going to hear that coming from us on how industry works together to bring models into the environments that we're going to validate and do thousands and thousands of runs to validate the capability. So when it goes to the fleet, we know exactly what it can do. We know that we can support what the warfighters need. And so that's important. That leads right up into what the NAVAIR business plan we're doing across both AD and WD. And then we're doing at each warfare center. We want to partner with you and help you move your technology forward. And the final thing that we're doing as part of this, and I'll get back to the end-to-end optimization, taking on a new role as the WD commander, as the chief tester. My counterpart, Admiral Doherty, who's AD, is the chief engineer for NAVAIR. We're still formalizing, writing the document, but I've been leaning forward and taking on the role and piloting what that looks like as a chief tester. And that is helping us to optimize how we deliver capability. That whole value chain, we're starting at the T&E in and moving left. We've taken a couple pilots through the program right now, F-18, their H-18 program, and AARGM-ER. And in just a few months we've been doing it, we started in the fall of last year. We've taken 11 months out of the AARGM-ER program, and we've gotten the H-18 to align to fleet design deliveries, 3 releases this year to help support capability that has to go to the fleet, support Super Hornet Block 3s, to support LRASM 1.1, support AARGM-ER, Next Gen Jammer, and other capabilities coming in the Hornet. And that is based on fleet needs and the dates that they need it, and we're working back left and taking time out of the system and having the hard conversations that are necessary across all the stakeholders. We talked about stakeholder alignment, other pieces. That's the key. So we're taking a lot of the lessons we learned through the naval sustainment system and how we took from 250 to 341 Hornets, from 50% readiness to 70 to 80% readiness across naval aviation. We're going to do that with capability, and we're piloting it. We're learning, and we got a lot more to go, and a lot more learning to go along the way. But happy to talk more about that role and what we're doing for integrating our developmental test, operational test, how we're learning earlier in the game and bringing visibility to the capability world.
All right, if nothing else, at least they're very consistent on messaging. Hey, if I'm in the crowd, I think, yeah, we've heard this before. So as you're asking the questions, ask them, show us the results. At a high level, I said we're going from good to great. 88% of our aircraft are meeting availability targets. 88%. Huge, tremendous. We took the learning we had from Hornet, we applied it to all the rest of the TMSs. That's availability, and that's just MC, mission capable. We're scaling down to full mission capable. From an affordability, we took $200 million out of the system last year and reinvested into naval aviation enterprises. This year, we're going after $1 billion. That's not doing more with less. That's making sure every single dollar of resource, of valuable resources that were provided, is achieving an outcome we're going after. That's knowing our business. And the last one for the capability, you kind of heard Brownie talk about that. This is active senior leadership management, stakeholder alignment, to make sure we're focused on the outcome we're going after and then work the problem back from that. It works. I have seen it work, and I'm excited about where these leaders are taking NAVAIR. All right, with that, we're open for questions. JLo, you have the first question. Nothing?
Great panel. Great to see all of you. One of the things that has been a headwind with a lot of transformations is how we equip the workforce to behave differently and adopt and adapt to this new world order. And is there a plan for that? Or, I mean, a lot of you know that I'm pretty passionate about that particular thing. So, but love to hear your thoughts. Thanks. Thanks, Rhoda. Good to see you. I mentioned that I brought in the executive core. We meet weekly because it's got to start at the top. What are the behaviors that allow us to transform, and how do we change the paradigms that we've been living with for my 37 years as well? That's been very helpful because I think a lot of people have kind of realized the difference maybe between a status quo system and sustaining it and moving to a different direction, breaking from a status quo to getting to something better. The other thing I've been doing is how do you connect to the workforce when you got a 44,000 strong workforce? So I started, Amy's there, deputy notes, that I tee up specific abundance versus scarcity was my first one. And I talk about it. I talk about my personal experiences in the command for 37 years and what does that mean to me and some of the behaviors and what are the things that we need to be thinking about as we move forward. We do it on Teams and it's, I think I have 2,000 regular subscribers now, but I get people talking about that continually, and I challenge our workforce to be, what are we doing with that information? I talk about a lost opportunity. That's learning without application. We can do a whole lot of learning, but if we don't apply it, it's a lost opportunity. And so I'm seeing a lot more very inspiring comments that fill up the responses to these deputy notes. That is quite inspiring. But there is this cultural aspect of this is how we've done it. I've seen this before. And we are working very diligently to break that through examples, through changes in the performance that we do. So this is, as I call it, a pursuit. It's a continual drive. Get real, get better is at the core, because without having the honest discussions about what behaviors we are seeing and what we need to do to change those, we will remain status quo. So we're fighting it at every turn. So.
Let me add to that, if I could. I talked about partnerships. We need a partnership on this journey. So as we go after the behaviors and the culture at NAVAIR, we need industry to come right along with us. So all of us, as we take briefs, as we're getting updates, we have 4 or 5 specific things we're looking for. Do we understand where we're trying to go? Do we understand what our North Star is, our Delta outcome is? Do we understand, have we taken the time to define the root cause of our current performance? No kidding, taking the time. Have we put a plan in place with metrics so we can measure ourselves towards the outcome we're going after? Then how are we going on that plan? That very simple formula applied over and over again. If you think about the Hornet readiness, that formula was applied. It's not rocket science. But from a NAVAIR perspective, we didn't apply it for a long time. We had some external company come in and help us think through the problem. But that first step of the North Star, the second step of taking the time to define the root cause of your current performance before you put a plan in, so critical. So we're doing that across NAVAIR. The leaders are trying to inculcate that behavior across the entire organization. We're changing behaviors. It's hard. My ask to industry, come along this journey with us.
Rhoda, I want to kind of answer your question too, because I think that's a journey we've been on specifically with our workforce. When I got out to NOC WD, I learned the area start of the journey. Scott Dillon, who's actually in the crowd here, kind of set them up for success doing this. But, we all knew that we were going to have a retirement coming. We all, even industry, we had an area of, where baby boomers are going to retire and our gray heads are going to go. And we weren't always ready for that. So we saw that start to go to retention, but we saw a bigger retention problem and we started digging in. So getting back to the root cause, hey, we could start acting, but we actually got into figuring out what the root cause. And we realized our younger generations were leaving at a faster pace than they had for 50 years. We had 50 years dead straight line data, and now it was changing. Like, well, what's different? And one, I think it is generational. So we have to listen and learn this new generation. But what we learn, we listen and learn, and we actually had Gallup come in and help us do this. So what's world-class? So we went out to, hey, what's world-class performance in our people? And so Gallup came and helped us say it has to do with your first-line leaders. And so we've been investing in teaching and training for our first-line leaders, an area where if we want to build and change the culture throughout, it's going to start at that level. I've met with my branch heads down the branch head level multiple times, and I've told them, I can tell you about this new transformation, but it's not going to happen unless you do it. And we're investing in them and helping them get there. We've also invested in some hard things called dual bottom line leadership, where they're focused on delivering outcomes and building their team. If you just deliver the outcome and destroy your team, you've not helped the Navy. And so we're working very hard on building that culture of leadership all throughout. And I think that gets to the partnership that we keep talking about. Authentic conversations, having the hard conversations, not talking around the problem. We do it with our people every day just to take care of them, and we need to do it with industry every day to solve the hard problems our nation needs us to solve. And we won't do it unless we take care of the team, the industry and government team, and we deliver on outcomes, and we have those really hard conversations, those authentic conversations. We can't tiptoe around each other. We got to get down and get it all on the table and then be on the same team to solve the problem together. And we hope that we'll continue to see that. We're already seeing an upward trend a little bit, and we hope to continue that upward trend in our command. But I think that's what it's going to take for us as a nation to serve as a acquisition, the business of our nation, between industry and us on the government side to solve our nation's problems.
All right, we have a question from our virtual audience. From Eric, where is the entry point to begin an engagement with NAVAIR?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Clearly, it really depends what the question is that one's going after. PEOs, the aviation PEOs is clearly where when I get asked, I say start with the programs, the PEOs themselves. And depending upon then other aspects, it could be the NOC. So it really is a function of the question. But small business, as I've highlighted, Shelby Butler back there is clearly an entry point, and then I'll have CJ pick up from here.
So one great way to interact with NOC AD is our industry days. We have regular industry days that bring you in to give you an understanding of what we're doing, what our challenges are, what our upcoming contract opportunities are. And if you're not participating in those, I would strongly recommend that you do so. In addition to understanding what our requirements are, it gives you an opportunity to interact in team with other members of the industry workforce to be able to compete for some of the work that we have going out there. So one of the primary mechanisms, if you're not currently engaging with us as an organization, is to take advantage of those industry days.
Thanks, CJ. I'll put in just one more plug. If your ask is regarding sustainment, and this is different, please come to the Central Capabilities Office within the FRC enterprise. It is your central clearinghouse, whether you're a government or industry, to allow you the full visibility of what the FRC enterprise can offer and where that work may be best suited. The legacy behavior was to, call your old buddy in FRC X, Y, or Z, see if you can build on old work. We're asking you to please not do that. Please come in. We'll lay out the complete set of capabilities that we have for maintenance, repair, overhaul, and manufacturing, and offer you that entry point as well as the partnership with the appropriate program office.
We actually have an additional question coming in from online. This is from Ms. Youngers. Are there strategies in place to accelerate the development and transition of technologies coming from our industry partners that provide readiness and or cost savings so they do not fall into the valley of death?
Well, I'll jump into the readiness sustainment. That's probably not my primary, but I will say there is a lot of movement and strategy to open up the communication with the the research and development community to pull those things through, because you can't push it through the valley of death. You got to pull it through. And so if you don't have a way to get, like with POs, the program managers, those are going to pull it to their platforms or pull it to an FRC to implement, it's going to sit on one side of the valley of death. And so I know we're working with Naval X and others to try to get those engagements. We have, the WD has industry days as well to hear those ideas. And we want to connect you. Hear the idea, we connect you with the right sponsor to pull that through. And that ultimately is the thing I've seen work over and over again. So there's a...
My perspective here is the valley of death is a broad general term. If you can link your product, your technique, your process towards a delta outcome across capability, affordability, and availability, you'll get across that valley. But most of the time, or a significant portion of the time, there's no linkage. Here's another input. All right, how does that input achieve a delta outcome across capability, affordability, and availability? Do your homework, come in with us, and trust me, we'll move. We have moved many things across the valley as long as they achieve a delta outcome. Otherwise, it's another input, and I don't have resources for additional inputs. I'm looking for delta outcomes.
And to add to that, if you were to take a look at our S&T initiatives at NAVAIR, we're radically transforming that as well. If we can't associate that to a potential outcome, we're going to go ahead and cancel that. We're going to be focusing on the technologies that we can actually transition rapidly to the warfighter. We want to make sure that there's a customer and a sponsor to be able to support that transition to the warfighter as well. So as we've taken a look at our S&T portfolio over the last year and a half, we basically revamped the entire process to focus on capability, affordability, and availability. And I think that's a step in the right direction for us internally to our organization, but we're applying that same thing to industry as well. And again, small business and SIBRs are a great opportunity as well. And we have the opportunities to be able to facilitate that. We have a number of those ongoing right now.
Do we have any additional questions?
Good morning. I'm with NAVAIR, Captain Kelly Varenfakis. I am the Reserve Force Aircraft Maintenance Officer. In our portfolio, we are exposed and maintain a lot of contracts, whether it's end-to-end supply, maintenance, maybe it's a little bit more isolated, just depot operations or engine and module performance. Now, what we are repeatedly seeing, regardless of TMS type of contract or program office, is that our contractors are meeting the metrics in the contract. They're meeting the requirements. But what we are seeing is that the contract actually fails to meet our requirements. What is being done within NAVAIR to develop the government experience so that we are getting those contracts that we need to support the fleet?
I'll let Joe answer that question, but I'll start off with a phrase that I have said over and over again since showing up back at NAVAIR. I am a much better PM as an 09 than I ever was as an 06. So as we learn and grow, to Mr. Radowski's earlier comment, lost opportunities for us to learn and grow so that our contracts, our incentive structures are aligned to the outcomes we're going after. Critically important, and we're learning and growing that across NAVAIR. Joe, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, sir. Hey, Kelly, great question. Thank you. Great to see you. One of the rock stars in aviation maintenance. So I'll answer it two ways. In our current contracts, what we're taking is the contracts that we have, modding them where appropriate, but using the behavior and the cultural changes, the transparency that we talked about, bringing in the government stakeholders, and you've seen it in many cases, with our primes, with their subs, to work through those barriers each and every day. In that process, we're learning, and so when we go and let the next iteration of the contract or the PBL to support it, we will have metrics that matter to the fleet. And it is an ongoing process, but the repository of learning, we're accumulating at an alarming rate. We're already seeing it. And you see it day in and day out in some of the forums that you support. So great question. But we always, Dr. Roy Lancaster does a lot of important work on metrics throughout NAVAIR, just as well as the FRCs. He has been the thought leader in that, and it stretches across execution and our forward looks at future contracts. So great question. Thank you.
Or here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to get something on contract just because we have a schedule to meet or we have to get budgets obligated. That is not being good stewards of taxpayer money. So the procurement group lead, Ms. Linda Mobley, has, we've prototyped this twice, and we're going to scale this across all of NAVAIR. How do we be sound businessmen, sound buyers of warfighting capability? We need to understand our business. We need to understand our contracts, our incentive structure, what the targets should be from a cost perspective. I think all of us live that each and every single day in our personal lives. We need to do that at NAVAIR as well, and we're doing that now.
I'll just add one additional thing that we're working on is working directly with industry. We're evaluating our existing contract mechanisms and working with industry, identifying those things are non-value added to the government and to industry. We're spending money executing work that nobody really benefits from. And so as part of that, if we can do a bilateral contract modification to be able to support that change, that means there's more money to be able to execute more work and support the warfighter.
Good morning. Thank you, gentlemen. Tim Fitzpatrick with Valiant Global Defense Services. Valiant is a 100% services company that supports NAVAIR and NOC-TSD for providing pilots and maintainers to best support the active duty fleet. One of the biggest challenges we have, and I know you share the challenge, is the pilot shortage today, where the pilots are transitioning to the airlines. When it goes to the corporate world, we face the same challenges of rising salaries to the point where it's definitely a seller's market for the pilots to demand long-term benefits, long-term pensions, where as industry, it's hard for us to meet that challenge and compete with the airlines. So I'm curious how NAVAIR is looking at maintaining the active duty fleet, or your thoughts on the pilot shortage at work. We maybe work collaboratively to help best support the warfighter. Over.
I'm looking for my flag A because he'd probably answer this question better than I would. All right, a couple different aspects. From a naval aviation perspective, we have a couple. Again, this is a family business, so I get on the ground feedback from the students going through flight school right now. So there's a backlog in naval aviation up to Admiral Paparo. It has got his attention. We're doing a methodical process, understanding how many aviators do we need to wing this year. Where are we today? What's our plan, and how are we measuring to a plan? Airboss just sent out a note last night to Admiral Brophy on kind of putting that plan together so we at least achieve the outcome we need from generating the aviators out to the fleet. The retention issue, it's probably better Navy personnel kind of answer to come back to you, not from a NAVAIR perspective. The greatest thing about having a flag aide is I get to drive hours and hours with him all over the world. And I get feedback from a lieutenant commander who says, here's what's going on out in the fleet. Here's what you're saying. Here's what people are hearing. So he was able to attend AFOS with me in Rafos last week. This discussion was addressed there, and he has homework due to me next week for me to provide feedback to leadership on here's what we're saying, here's what the fleet's hearing, and here's his recommendations on things we can do. The incentive structure doesn't really work. It's another input, but I'm not sure if we're achieving the outcome we can do that. The quality of life issues, flexibility, and their work-life balance. I mean, there's a lot of things that, again, my 26-year-old is talking about the same thing here. I want the flexibility. I want this. I want that. It's a different Navy than I grew up in, but that's okay. We've evolved. We need to evolve our personnel system as the youth evolve as well. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll just add one more thing, and I think we talked about it at AFOTS, but I've heard it other places. We are a profession in naval aviation, and we have to bring back some of the esprit de corps that we probably lost, especially during the pandemic when we had to separate. We had to send our units and our people home for good reason to protect them. But now we've got to rebuild the team, and that goes not just for the civilians, but for the folks in uniform too. Rebuild the ready rooms and the wardrooms and the esprit de corps and the profession of naval aviation. And that was talked about several times, and I hear that from the young folks as well. And I think as we continue to build the purpose, people live for purpose. They don't just live for money. And so we start to help them understand the true purpose that they can serve and the camaraderie that they can gain, whether you're in uniform or out, because we see that even in our civilian servants to the Navy. And our industry folks, I know, are long-term supporters of the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and others. You know, you see the family and the camaraderie. I think we got to keep building that. And as we start to partner together, once again, that'll give us an opportunity to build that camaraderie and that partnership, and people will see the purpose. And when sometimes their life changes and they've got to take the uniform off, hopefully we'll have more people available to fly the jets. And we need to let them know, you can keep flying a jet. You don't have to wear a uniform to fly a jet. There's opportunities to serve your nation, to serve your Navy, and to do it in many different ways. And so I think that will be as we continue to build that camaraderie, we're going to see it happen and change.
I'll just build very briefly. It is not just an aviator challenge. Our aviation maintainers, we suffer some of the same phenomena. And our industry partners, we see it as well. So part of that, as Brownie said, you have to provide an environment, a culture where you know that at the end of your 8 or 10 hour shift that you've left it all on the field and you've made impact. Our obligation is to make sure we provide a world-class environment. We expect 21st century results. We can't allow that to go in an early 20th century work environment in some places. So we're working through that as well. Thank you.
And so we do have a follow-on question from our virtual audience. How do I, as a NOC-TSD program manager, how do I find these pilots to support my FMS contract requirements for pilots?
Call me. Seriously, so Doc's not here, but have them reach up to their skipper. Stuckey's here, so the skipper of NOC-TSD. I don't understand his ask is he wants to find reserve pilots to support his training. So I'll let me take that one offline, and I'll follow up with the NOC-TSD team here. Go ahead, J-Lo.
Good morning. Yeah, I kind of feel like I got called out for asking questions, so here's the question. Also, I think lots of us would voluntarily go back to flight school to help overcome that pilot challenge. I will do it in a heartbeat. Many of us would do it. So question, I know you were talking about models and digital transformation, and I'm just kind of wondering, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing in getting the right models from industry, the right fidelity, and integrating those models? If you can share some of those challenges that we in academia, I'm Jason Lopez, Georgia Tech Research Institute. How can we in academia and industry help you overcome those challenges to get that digital environment where you need it to be?
Excellent question. Right, model-based systems engineering, digital engineering is nothing new. We've been talking about doing it for a number of years. I think one of the challenges that I've specifically experienced is the compatibility of the models coming from different industry partners and being able to having them work together. I'm going to go back to the whole discussion about open systems and being able to establish those interfaces so that we can rapidly integrate those models together so that we can be able to perform that system level and campaign level modeling outcome. That was one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing right now. We're trying to help facilitate that, but again, it's a very large industry base, and trying to establish what the right industry standards are that should be applying as part of that has been a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I guess I'll almost step on the same thing. It comes down to standards and interoperability, and the government has not done a good job of that. In fact, where we've tried, we probably haven't done a good job of that either. And so that's where we need the partnership. You see other services in their consortium models that bring industry in, and the standards are set by industry and the government. It's a government-owned standard, but it's not set by the government. And so I think, we have teams that are working in the digital space right now to align on what that looks like. Between the Joint Simulation Environment, Integrated Fires Lab, other kind of modeling and simulation environments, we owe industry, these are the standards that you've got to build models to. And here's the fidelities. The fidelity will change based on early concept to early development to, hey, we're in full development to training. Those fidelities will change, but they need to be interactive with all the modeling environments available, and not just the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, across the services. We've got to make sure they're there, but we have not done a good job of that, and teams are working hard to help build those standards. And they should be bringing in industry. Like I said, we can't do it inside the government and go, hey, we have all the answers in the government. The answers are sitting here around us today. And so we got to build a partnership together to make that happen.
I do think this question also centers around the promise of digital engineering, digital transformation. We talked about capability, availability, affordability, and a lot of what we see is, okay, the typical maturation of how to do things, but does it really change the timelines of product delivery? Does it change the quality of the product for the warfighter in a reliability sense? And so the question really becomes, how is digital transformation, where are the wins that dramatically are changing capability, availability, and affordability? To be clear, and Admiral has talked to this several forums as well, I might have stole his thunder on this question, but fundamentally, we're not seeing a dramatic change from it. Now, is it still in its infancy in terms of what it can really do? I'm an engineer. I would say that I've been around it a long time, so I've seen it's been incremental, supporting a status quo system. We are looking for a breakout from a status quo system of digital transformation. And so those ideas is that partnership that we're looking for. What's discussed in terms of open architecture and all? Yes. But how do we then get to that next level of breakout beyond? And so I think that's a challenge for all of us as a collective community.
Okay, sir, we have time for one more question. Yes, ma'am.
Proximity. Hi, my name is Mara from Matter Hackers. We actually supply desktop 3D printers and materials to NAVAIR and also training. And one of the things that we've seen historically is that service folks get trained, but then they leave. And these machines, this technology that the government has invested a lot of time and money, there's no one left to run it. So I'm wondering if you could talk about NAVAIR's commitment to continuous training to make sure that you're getting the value for the technology that you're buying, but that also industry, once these folks retire and get into civilian life, that they have the job skills that they need to fill the jobs that we all have and we need workers for as well.
Yeah, hi, great question. Thank you. I'll approach it from an FRC perspective, and then I'll turn it over and we'll talk from a more broader training perspective. But within the FRCs, one of the things that we're doing to make sure that we're neither gapping capability nor overly redundant is we're establishing centers of excellence. For the FRC enterprise, our center of excellence for additive manufacturing, for example, has been established in Cherry Point at FRC East. That does not mean they will do all the additive manufacturing, just means they will be the repository for workload. They will understand best practices. They will help that promulgate across the industry. And keep in mind too, most of our workforce in those heavy depots are civilian artists considered in many cases there for a couple of decades, if not more. So on our side, that pivot from doing additive manufacturing for additive manufacturing's sake to a really focused look on where it can be another, arrow in the quiver as we look to solve material constraints, parts constraints, is going to help us a lot going forward. I will pass the mic to your earlier question about the training continuum, particularly with the active duty force.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, particularly getting back to the workforce focus. I would tell you, not just in the 3D, but any new technology or area, cyber is one as well. What are our pipelines? This is a critical statement. What are our pipelines and what are we doing in the imbalance? If we continually do status quo recruitment, going after the same old aero, mechanical, double E, we're missing what the future is required of us. And so that's being looked at very hard to make sure that Steve Critchie, our NOC AD, said it offsite about a year ago. He says it's not that we don't have enough people. We just don't have enough the people working on these things. And so I think we're in and I've said this on several forums, I believe from a workforce perspective, we have an imbalance. We have an imbalance of the talent and what the talent is developed to do. And we've got to migrate ourselves into these new technologies to shore them up. I was at the groundbreaking for NAVAIR's 3D printing, the V-22, Admiral Dunaway at the time, and I was 4-3 at the time, and I said, if you really want to send a message, let's go after a critical component, print it and fly it. And that's what we did. To send a message to industry, we're serious. and also to break down some of the barriers that we have within our own ranks of the airworthiness challenges and those types of things. So now that we've broken down, while we still have work to do in those areas to really make it a mainstay, how do we shore up the pipelines of talent to make sure that they continually grow just as rapidly as the technology grows? So it's a great question, and I would just apply it to a lot of the new areas that we are currently being challenged across the board. So it's and then we have been working employer of choice kind of continuum from first contact to, I would say, retirement. But how do we get after those first day? How do we get after first contact? How do we get the right mix? And that's going to be a continual pursuit as well. But we're working as well.
I'll just add one additional thing to that. We're very involved in the STEM programs, but one of the things that we recently started was our artisan program. We recognize that we could not do anything without our artisans and the skill sets that they bring to the table. So we're working with our local high schools, those that have grown up in the community that we work, and be able to bring them forward and give them opportunities to see the great things that we're doing in both subtractive additive manufacturing, state-of-the-art manufacturing technology, and they're excited about it. So, they go from high school, they get that opportunity, and now they want to come work for us. So I think that's the process that we're using to have them build a career with our organization.
Hey, great question. When I heard the question now, I went to it immediately another input. We need more training, we need more people. A better question, or another way to look at that problem, is why are the systems so hard for anybody, any apprentice, to be able to use that system? I started flying F-14s years ago. The number of field carrier landing patterns I had to do to be ready to go to the boat was a lot. That's a little bit indicative of the technology, a little bit indicative of my performance. Today, with technology, we're sending students through flight school without ever seeing the aircraft carrier, because we have technology called magic carpets that's enabling them to be more successful around the boat here. So again, a different way of looking at the problem. What is the delta outcome we're trying to achieve? To be able to use this product so we can reduce cost, we can increase availability or decrease or increase capability. All right, how do we get there? So it's just a different way of looking at the problem. All right, I think we're done. Again, if you've probably heard it, 15, 20 times. We're focused on outcomes that matter to the warfighter, ensuring our sons and daughters, the warfighters, have the capability they need to execute their mission successfully and return home safely. Anything and everything you can do in that journey for us, we're all ears. We're very interested in that. All right, big round of applause for the panel members.
Sir, thank you. And thank you to all of our panel members and for all of you for attending today. Just a note, our 1:30 with Captain Dan Cavalli has been pushed back to 1:45. We want to allow everybody to have the opportunity to return from lunch. So please note our next speaker is at 1:45 today. Hope to see you then.